Hi, today we're going to cook a pork loin roast, and my particular roast is about 1.79 pounds. And for this recipe, you're going to need 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of pepper, 2 cups of quartered onions or coarsely chopped onions, and about 4 cups of quartered potatoes. We're going to start with our roast. We're going to take 2 teaspoons of salt, about a teaspoon of salt for each side of the roast, and we're going to spread that salt on and rub it in. Then next we're going to do the same thing with the pepper. We're going to rub that in, and then we're going to place the roast on a metal tray, a little stand that lets air flow all the way around the roast, for about half an hour. And then our roast will be properly seasoned for the recipe. So our roast has been sitting for about half an hour, giving the salt and pepper time to be absorbed. And now we're going to cook this roast at 350 degrees till the internal temperature of the roast is at 190 degrees, because this is a pork loin roast. So I'm going to add the roast to my baking dish, and I'm going to add just enough water to come up the sides of the roast about halfway. I don't really want to cover the entire roast. Next, I'm going to take a sheet of aluminum foil, and I'm just going to seal the roast in my baking dish. And then I'm going to place it in the oven. And we're going to let that cook for a couple hours before we check the temperature. I'm not going to add my onions and potatoes for at least the first hour, because I don't want the potatoes and onions to be real mushy when they're done. I want them to be cooked just right. So we'll add those later in the recipe. Okay, so our roast has been cooking now for an hour and a half. Now my roast was frozen, so it's going to take longer to cook than, say, a thawed roast. Let's check the temperature real quick. We'll give that thermometer a chance to come up to temperature. And for a pork roast like this, you want the temperature to be 190 degrees when it's done. And that looks like the pork roast is about at 149 degrees. And that's just about where we wanted to add the potatoes and onions, because we don't want too much cooking time on the potatoes and onions. We don't want the potatoes to come out mushy. So I'm going to add the potatoes and onions to the roast. The rest of these onions in here, and I'm going to pop this back in the oven for about another hour and a half, and we'll see if it's up to temperature at that point. Okay, the roast has been cooking for about 3 hours now. I've pulled it out of the oven. Let's check the temperature and see how we're doing. Okay, the roast is about 198 degrees, and remember, we want to cook it till it's about 190 degrees. So the roast is cooked well done, and let's transfer this to a plate. And we're going to try this roast. Transfer a few potatoes too. And we're going to try this roast and see how we did. Looks good inside. Very hot, but absolutely delicious. Now let's try the potatoes. Nicely done. They're not overcooked. They turned out very well. So that's roast and potatoes. And if your roast is thawed, you don't need to cook it for quite as long. Mine was frozen, so it took about 3 hours. And you want to make sure your internal temperature is 190 degrees or higher because this is pork roast. Thanks.